one big one out of
Good deal. Heck yeah.
I mean, like choke. Look at that. This one big dog.
Oh yeah. Heck yeah. Right there will help.
Heck yeah, it will. Heck yeah, it will. Man, I mean, destroy. YouTube, what's up? Back again for another daily fishing video here on Andrew Upshaw Fishing. Guys, today I'm going to talk to you about a very important topic when it comes to throwing a crankbait and having the right retrieve reel to help you catch more bass. And let me tell you guys, I'm here at Lake Cherokee in Tennessee. It's a place that I've won before, and I can't tell you how important speed of your retrieve is this particular week. So I'm going to spill the beans a little bit on about how I'm catching them here and what you need to look for the next time you get in this situation. So cranking has evolved over time. You know, you have guys that throw 7.5 to 1 gear ratio reels, they'll throw 6.8 to 1s, and they'll throw 5 to 1 gear ratio reels. And sometimes as an average fisherman or just an everyday guy that just goes out there and has fun, it can be kind of complicated and trying to figure out exactly what gear ratio reel you need for every situation. But today I'm going to break that down for you. I'm going to show you everything that I know about gear ratios and how they can help you the next time you're on the water. So this week on Cherokee, we've dealt with a lot of different conditions, from cold, really cold nights to post-vernal conditions and a lot of changing weather. And one thing that, a good rule of thumb that I always have, is that when the water is really, really cold, I go down to a 5 to 1 gear ratio reel. And I'm talking like 45 degree water all the way to about 52, 53. I really like that 5 to 1 gear ratio reel. And the thing about a 5 to 1 gear ratio reel is I can speed it up at any time, and I can get it to that 6 to 1 gear ratio by just the amount of speed that I crank the bait. But if I need to slow it down and crawl that bait across the bottom, the 5 to 1 is going to get the job done. You know, this actually brings me back to a funny story. I was actually in the booth one time with David Fritz. And David Fritz is the king of crankbait fishing, and I was asking him a bunch of questions. Because you ever put me around a guy like David Fritz, a Kevin Van Dam, somebody like that, and I have the opportunity to ask him questions, that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I asked Fritz exactly why he fishes with a 5 to 1 gear ratio reel, and honestly, his response kind of surprised me. And the reason it did is because the way he thinks about it is the fact that nowadays, so many guys are going so fast that sometimes that slower gear ratio is going to get even more bites and keep his bait in the strike zone even longer. And that's a really important topic. Whenever you're talking about fish that don't really want to feed, they don't want to react to a bait, and you're bouncing it off a tree or whatever it may be, a rock or something like that, you bounce that bait off there. If you're throwing a 6 to 1 gear ratio or even a 7 to 1 gear ratio reel, your bait's going to fly past there super fast, and that fish has no other choice but either to react or not to react. But sometimes with that slower gear ratio reel, you crank that bait through there, it hits something, you stop it and you start cranking it again, it doesn't take it away from the cover quite as fast. So it gives that fish a split second longer to make the decision on whether or not to eat the bait. And when I deal with those colder water temperatures, that 5 to 1 gear ratio has saved my bacon. I can't even tell you how many times. Throwing like a wigglewort style bait, a flat-sided crankbait, even a square bill in some situations, that 5 to 1 gear ratio reel is the one that I turn to. I always use the BB1, and only because David Fritz told me that's the one I needed. And it's never let me down. It casts a long ways, it holds a bunch of line, and it's definitely the one that I turn to. Now, as cranking has evolved, and we've got new crankbaits, we've got new techniques and all these things, I've evolved a little bit too. I actually, now, for the most part, when the water gets above about 52, 53, all the way to the 60s, I go to a 6.8 to 1 gear ratio. The BB1 Pro, I've used the Custom forever, but they're actually remodeling the Custom now. But the BB1 Pro is kind of where I'm turning to. The whole reason behind the 6.8 to 1 gear ratio, and this is, in my opinion, the best overall, like when you look at the whole scheme of cranking, the best overall gear ratio is the fact that I can do way more with it. You know, if I want to even put a swim bait on it, I can. I can slow a swim bait way down with a lighter line. I can crank with it. I can slow a spinner bait down, a thunder cricket down. I can do a lot of different things. But the cool thing about a 6/8 to 1 gear ratio, when you crank it really, really fast, and we all have a tendency to fish way too fast a lot of times, that 6/8 to 1, you can still get it up to that really quick gear ratio of like an average crank of a 7 to 1. So I can do a lot with this particular gear ratio, but I can also slow myself down immensely. You know, there's actually still a lot of guys out there, especially the older generation, that still worm fishes with that 6/8 to 1. So just because I say this is a great cranking reel, a great spinner bait, you know, vibrating jig reel, you can still do a lot of other things with it. But this, if you're looking for a slower gear ratio reel, but not something that's just going to be so super specific like a 5 to 1 gear ratio, that 6/8 to 1 gear ratio is the direction I turn. And I really like that 6/8, especially on the new Chick Magnet. But I really like that 6/8 to 1 gear ratio. It is so super versatile. I can do a lot of things with it. Now, as you bump up, you know, you get past the slower gear ratios. When there are certain situations you want a 7/5 to 1 gear ratio reel, and this is like your typical worm rod. Your fast gear ratio. There's guys out there that crank with that reel all the time. They're speed cranking 6XDs, 5XDs, square bills, and things like that. I still throw my square bill in a 7/5 to 1 too, and I'll just keep it at a moderate pace, and I tend to get a lot of bites that way. But more importantly than anything, you got to pay attention to water temp, water color. If the water is really, really dirty, I tend to slow it down a little bit. Once again, it gives those fish a little bit more time to react. I'll slow my retrieve down, make sure those fish have a chance to eat it. The clearer the water, the faster the gear ratio, because they can see the bait better, and a lot of times that causes the fish to react faster. Now, when you go to the 7/5 to 1 gear ratio reel and you get offshore and you do all that speed cranking stuff, that's more about just covering as much water as you can and forcing those fish in those big schools to react, and that speed cranking will do that. But more times than not, Lake Cherokee this week, we have rising water temps. If you slow your bait down just a little bit, not so much that you need a 5 to 1, but go to that 6/8 to 1 gear ratio, you'll be shocked how many extra bites you get. Guys, I hope y'all have enjoyed this video. It's just a quick dive into gear ratios, and I hope it helps you the next time you're out there trying to find the reel to crank your favorite crankbait with. I'll see you on the next video, guys, and I really appreciate y'all watching.